Have you ever stopped to think about how a huge global company keeps its digital address book in perfect sync? You know, all its users, computers, permissions, everything. Well, today, we're going to break down the absolutely brilliant engineering behind Active Directory's replication model. It's the magic that makes it all just work.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start with the massive problem Active Directory was designed to solve. Then, we'll dive into its super elegant solution, break down the 4 key pillars that make it tick, understand why it's so darn effective, and finally, take a look at the other tech that holds it all together. All right, let's dive right in. To really get why the solution is so clever, you first have to appreciate the sheer scale of the problem we're talking about. This isn't your phone's contact list. This is the central nervous system for a massive global organization. So this is the fundamental question, right? Imagine millions of objects, and now imagine those objects can be changed from anywhere, New York, London, Tokyo, at any second. How do you make sure that when someone resets their password in one city, it's recognized everywhere else, almost instantly, without completely crushing the entire network? That, right there, is the dilemma. So how in the world did Microsoft tackle this? Well, their answer wasn't just, let's get a bigger pipe. That's the brute force way. Instead, they went with something way smarter, a classic divide and conquer strategy.
The first piece of genius is something called partitioning. Instead of treating the directory as one single enormous file, Active Directory breaks it up into logical chunks. You have the domain partition, which holds all the users and computers. You have the configuration partition for the force structure, and the schema partition, which is basically the rulebook. This means a server in one domain doesn't waste time and bandwidth replicating user changes from a totally different domain. It's incredibly efficient.
Okay, so we've divided the directory, but how does the data actually, move between all these different domain controllers? Well, the whole process is built on what you can think of as 4 pillars of replication. These are the core engines that let Active Directory handle updates so gracefully. What's really cool is how these 4 ideas all work together. Multimaster means any server can take an update, so there's no single point of failure. Pull replication means servers only ask for what they need, which saves a ton of bandwidth. Store and forward is like a relay race for changes, passing them from one server to another to balance the load. And state-based replication is the brain of the operation, making the whole thing smarter by only tracking the final outcome of changes. Let's break a few of these down a little more. The multi-master model is a total game changer. Think of it like a shared Google Doc versus a Word file saved on just one person's computer. With a single master, if that one server goes down, that's it. Nobody can make changes. No new users, no password resets. It's a huge risk. But with multi-master, any domain controller can accept a change, giving you incredible fault tolerance. Pull replication is all about being a smart consumer of data. Imagine subscribing only to the news feeds you actually care about, instead of having every newspaper in the world delivered to your door every day. That's the difference. A domain controller just says, hey, I last synced with you at this time. What's new since then? It pulls only the changes it needs, which is way more efficient and keeps the network from getting clogged up. And this adds another layer of intelligence. A log-based system would replicate every single step. For instance, set password to X, then to Y, then, oops, actually to Z. State-based replication is much smarter. It just looks at the final result and says, okay, the password is now Z. It replicates the final state of the object, not the whole messy history of how it got there. It prevents so much unnecessary work. So when you combine all these pillars, the multi-master model, pull replication, everything, you get a system that is incredibly robust, scalable, and efficient. And it's all built on this beautiful design philosophy called eventual consistency. These are the big promises the model delivers on. Because of the multi-master design, your domain controllers are always available for updates. Because of pull and state-based replication, data transfer is super efficient. And the system has these amazing built-in ways to resolve conflicts automatically, which means the directory stays reliable and consistent over time. Now, this statistic is key. It really helps you understand why availability is so important. For every 1 time somebody changes something in Active Directory, it gets read 99 times. Think about it. People logging in, apps checking permissions, it is constant. So that multi-master model ensures there are plenty of up-to-date replicas just sitting there, ready to handle that massive read workload. Now, a multi-master system does have a trade-off, and that's latency.
It's that tiny delay between a change being made on one server and that change showing up on all the others. But here's the thing. This isn't a flaw. It's not a bug. It's a planned and managed part of the system.
This leads to a concept called loose consistency. It just means that if you could freeze time and look at the directory in New York and Tokyo at the exact same instant, they might be slightly different. But this is a deliberate choice. It's what allows any office to make updates without having to wait for permission from some central server. It's a system that prioritizes availability. And this brings us to the ultimate promise, convergence. Even though the directory might be loosely consistent from moment to moment, the system guarantees that if you stop making changes, every single domain controller will eventually catch up and hold the exact same information. This is how Active Directory gives you both high availability and rock-solid data integrity. It's pretty amazing.
Of course, Active Directory replication doesn't exist in a bubble. It's built on the shoulders of several other really fundamental networking technologies. You can think of it as part of a powerful ecosystem. You can think of it like a four-step dance. First, a domain controller uses DNS to find its replication partner's IP address. Then it uses something called RPC to establish a connection. That whole conversation is then secured and authenticated with Kerberos, making sure they can trust each other. And finally, for the really big jobs, like syncing an entire replica for a brand new server, they use the directory's native language, LDAP. It's just a powerful symphony of protocols all working together. And that brings us to a final thought. The principles we've talked about, multimaster replication, eventual consistency, fault tolerance, these were designed over 2 decades ago. And yet, as we move into this modern, cloud-based world, these core concepts are more relevant than ever. They still form the foundation of how we build the resilient, trustworthy digital world we all rely on today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.